welcome to Fantastic Books and Where to Find Them. Today I want to talk to you about The Bells by Danielle Clayton. This is an ARC copy. One of my friends managed to get hold of one and after reading it said she loved it and I needed to read it, so I did. I will never learn about listening to this particular friend about book recommendations. Don't let that scare you off though, I did absolutely love this book. So the setting of The Bells is quite difficult to ascertain. On one hand it feels kind of steampunky and on the other side it feels kind of dystopian and futuristic. It begins with a story about how the god of the sky fell in love with the goddess of beauty. They get married, they have children. The goddess of beauty ends up spending all of her time with her children because she loves them so very, very much. The god of the sky becomes jealous because she spends all her time with the children. She never returns home to him. Then, and I'm going to read this from the book because it's a better description than how I could give it, Sky sent rain and lightning and wind down to the first humans. When beauty protected the people from harm, Sky cursed them with skin the colour of a sunless sky, eyes the shade of blood, hair the texture of rotten straw, and a deep sadness that quickly turned to madness. In return, Beauty sent the bells to be the roses growing out of the dark and ravaged soil, destined to bring beauty back to the damned world as the sun brings light. So these people when they're born have grey skin and red eyes, and they're known as the Griss. And then we have the Bells. These are all women who have, I don't want to call it magical powers, but that's kind of how it seems to start with. In the end, it sort of feels like it's something more. They call it their arcana. And this is kind of, they have the ability to change the appearance of people, so they can change their skin colour, change the colour of their eyes. They can even change, they do deep body modifications like size of their waist or someone's breasts. And then their manner, they can change, if someone has a really bad temper, they can calm them and make their attitude more palatable. So these bells are tasked with changing the way that the Griss look. And it does kind of sound a little shallow, that they just don't want to look great and have red eyes, but it does sound like they do become mad when they return to the natural state like that. Don't get me wrong, a lot of it is shallow, a lot of it is, and they're basically not the entire world, because we only really see New Orleans, but that entire city thrives on beauty. There are beauty scopes, all the newspapers and things it's all beauty related, and you know, it makes sense. The world is described so beautifully and everything seems so decadent and sweet. Like, think Kristen Stewart's Marie Antoinette at the beginning of it, at least. That's the sort of feel I think this universe has. Sort of sweet and sugary. But imagine you mix that with like the Hunger Games and then throw in like the political intrigue of Game of Thrones. That is how I would describe this. Marie Antoinette, Hunger Games, and Game of Thrones. Our story follows a particular generation of Bells, including Camilla Beauregard. The Bells themselves are brought up with their mothers outside of the city, outside of all of the opulence, and kept separate so they can learn their craft and not be disturbed by anything else or influenced by anything else they might see. And then they sort of swap the generations, so when these bells come of age, which I believe is at 16, they then travel into Orleans and they replace their older sisters who are the previous generation. It's not really explained, I don't think, how long there is between the generations. I don't think it's that long though, because this generation of bells who are going into the city do remember the other ones leaving. So the bells have to compete in a carnival. They show off their skills, their talents, and then they are selected to put in different places over the city. Usually like one of the tea houses that's around, but there is one who will be picked to stay at the palace and work with the king, the queen, and the princess, and that is called the favourite. Obviously pretty much all the bells will be picked as the favourite, especially our main character Camille and her best friend Amber. It's going to be a spoiler-free review, so I won't say obviously who is picked or anything like that, but the favourite does get picked, and it's shown that things aren't quite as they seem. I do like that there was kind of a little bit of investigation going on. There wasn't too much of it, it was kind of more like curiosity. This is really hard to do without spoilers, but I can tell you that Camilla and her sisters realise once they are at court that things are nowhere near the way they thought they would go. They discover the darkness of the world that they were kind of shielded from when they were at home, and they don't really know that much about themselves, considering that they have been brought up learning about their craft. They discover there are things that they didn't know about themselves, about their own powers and the way that they are treated and seen by the world. You kind of get the sense at the beginning that they are these extensions of the goddess of beauty, that they're extremely high ranking and are pretty much all powerful. But I think as you read on, you kind of realise more that they are like tools. They are almost as if, you know, we could just keep them in a makeup bag. That's kind of how it feels after a while. And I kind of like how that disillusion kind of comes into play, because you're sort of figuring it out at the same time the character is. Just trying to make sure that whatever I go over is in the blurb, so it's not classed as a spoiler, but it does mention that the Queen asks Camilla to heal her daughter. The Queen has 2 daughters, the eldest of which is unwell, and the Queen understandably wants to save her, and she thinks Camilla is the one that can do it, because she does have, her powers are probably a little bit more, I don't know if it's the way that she uses them. A lot of her sisters like to follow the rules, but Camilla is very, not a rule breaker necessarily, more of a rule bender, and I think because of the way she focuses about her powers, that does give her a better access to her abilities. There's not a lot of action in this book, but I didn't expect there to be. It didn't drag too much. It was, I think it came close a couple of times when I thought, is this really necessary? And to begin with, I really loved the way the treatments were done. Because they're changing skin colour, they'd put like bay powder over, and they put colourants in the hair, and then they use their arcana to change it afterwards, make it a bit more semi-permanent. I forgot to mention that treatments only tend to last about a month, and that also depends on loads of other things. So they still use products to sort of accent their abilities, and I loved the way that they were described for quite a while, maybe like 3/4 of the book, maybe half of the book, but after a while I got kind of bored of hearing about bay powder and chafing dishes and medicinal pastas and creme cake, just because it seems a little bit repetitive. And at odd times I was thinking, is this really, you know, they walk into a room and there's a chafing dish. I probably pronounced it wrong. But yeah, there's them, or melting pastils and that sort of thing, which I get sometimes it does set the scene and it is kind of needed to an extent, but I did find it a little bit repetitive. There's a bit that I think was meant to be a twist that I called as soon as we met one of the characters. So that didn't shock me very much, but that could be because of some of the books I've read recently. It kind of made me a bit more suspicious and untrusting. I'm not sure. It's sort of, I'd be interested to talk about other people about this and see if they thought the same thing as me. There's a little bit of romance in this, and it's not too much, which I enjoy. I did kind of like through most of the scenes. It wasn't because they were bad scenes, but I just wasn't invested in it. So it wasn't sort of to the detriment of the book at all, but it just wasn't for me. But it's in there, but it doesn't affect the story too much in theory. It's okay. I will say, however, this book made me angry, but angry in a good way, if that makes sense. There's a character in this who, to me, is kind of on the same level in a way as Professor Umbridge from Harry Potter. And I know that's a big thing to say, but I've had to wear lip balm for the past couple of days because I've been chomping on my lips in anger because of the actions of this character. It's kind of weird. It's like when you get sad at a book, that kind of enhances it, and it's the same thing with this anger. There was one point when I think I did nearly shed a whole tear, because I was so angry. There are definitely bullying themes in this book, much like with the Cruel Prince. And again, this was done to a way that it really affected me. Again, the whole injustice of everything, being able to not change your situation really and being pressured into things. And that really enhanced this for me. I did text my friend to say I want to throw the book across the room. If it didn't belong to you, I would have thrown it across the room by now. And I did find that I, like with Her at the Fall, got to the last 100 pages and didn't want to finish it, because I even sent my friend a picture saying there are not enough pages left for the stuff that needs to happen. Also, heads up, this is the first book in a series. That's an important thing to know, because I didn't know. Just like with The Court of Mist and Fury, which I didn't realise was not a 2-book series. I'm not sure how many books there are going to be in this series, but there's definitely going to be a second one. This book came out, I think, a couple of days ago in the US and today in the UK, and I already need that sequel. That's going to be the only problem, I think, with reading ARCs, is that before the book's even out, or the day the book is out, I already need the sequel. There's so many things I want to say about this book. I'm not going to do a spoiler video about this one because it would just be me ranting, and I was nearly going to film my review last night, but it literally would have just been me going, ah, the entire time. But it's kind of a good anger. That's the thing, right? I'm going to give The Bells 4.5 stars out of 5. This was very close to being a 5-star book. Just some of the repetitive things that were annoying is anything that kind of let it down, and that's, again, it's just personal preference, as are all of these reviews. The things that niggle me in this are personal preferences. They may not bother everyone, and the book is still fantastic. I highly recommend you pick it up. We get some nice representation in this. There's obviously people of colour, but they change their skin tones all the time, which is really weird. Our protagonist is a lady of colour and she kicks ass. We have a couple of same-sex couples in this, and they're not made a massive deal of, which I really, really like. Along with, there's a headline, and I took a picture of it because I was like, wow, that's awesome. Again, not made a massive deal out of, but there is a transgender reference where the Queen has changed the law for somebody who doesn't feel like they're born in the right body, so that they can have their body changed to reflect that. And I think that was a nice little snippet put in there. I think this book has done representation of all these different things so well, because it's not made a massive deal out of. They're just things that happen, which they are in real life. They're just things that happen. We've got the representation without having to go, look, token gay character, token transgender character, look, this one person is a person of colour and they're awesome. If that makes sense. It's just put in there naturally, which I really, really loved. So I'm gonna stop talking now because I've gone on for a while. And I need to file it away in my brain until we get the sequel, because otherwise it's going to drive me nuts. So that was The Bells by D.N.L. Clayton. This book is published by Golansk in the UK, and by the time this video goes up should be available most places. I'll stick all the normal links in the description so you can buy it, you can find it on your Goodreads and all the socials. So until then, if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If you really like this video and what I do, give us a subscribe, which is awesome. We've just hit 250 subscribers, so yay! And I'll see you next time. Goodbye!